Today is Trinity Sunday, June 12th, 2022, and this is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. I recently shared the news that the Lord provided for us the opportunity to establish an office for the Classical Liberal Arts Academy in downtown Monroe, North Carolina, where we live, just about a half hour southeast of Charlotte, North Carolina. And this opportunity to work out of an office in a rapidly growing area is a really great opportunity for us that allows me to return to what I consider to be my first love as far as work is concerned. I've spent the last 15 years working full-time to research and restore the classical Catholic curriculum. And many people would wonder, how in the world can you afford to spend 15 years in full-time research and publishing work? How is this provided for? And the answer goes back to what I was doing in 2007, 2008, which was tutoring. I was a private tutor. I worked with families throughout the Charlotte area, and I tutored students privately. Students from prominent Catholic families, professionals, and so on. I visited their homes and privately tutored their children in the classical Catholic curriculum and helped them with modern studies as well. The success of that tutoring work spread quickly and actually was the cause of the development of the original Classical Liberal Arts Academy website, which then spread, and as students enrolled from all over the world, that became my full-time work, and I stepped away from tutoring and have been away from tutoring for 15 years. But this opportunity in my life, with an office space in a building that I've been attracted to for years, right in the middle of the downtown area where we live, just next to the local public library, surrounded by churches. This opportunity has given me the chance to get back to my favorite work, which is the work of tutoring, working directly with individual students or small groups of students to really dig in and make progress in classical Catholic studies and in modern studies as well, because we always have to do both. We can't choose one or the other. We have to do both. And I'm very excited about getting back to that work of tutoring. Now, one of the problems with tutoring is that many Christian families see tutoring as some kind of luxury for wealthy people. And I have to admit, many of the families that hired me to be a tutor were very wealthy families that had money to waste, as it were. But tutoring should not be considered a luxury for wealthy families any more than taking a car to a mechanic should be considered a luxury. Tutoring is a necessary part of Christian culture. Tutoring is a necessary part of Christian family life, and I'd like to explain that a little bit, because many parents think of it wrongly, and they have a distorted view of tutoring because of the effects of modern tutoring, which gives tutoring a bad name. So I'd like to talk about what's wrong with modern tutoring and why a classical Catholic tutor like myself is actually an important part of Catholic family culture, and why Catholic families, even those who don't have much money, should make an effort to give their children the benefits that are available through an expert tutor. So first, let's talk about what's wrong with modern tutoring, because parents ask responsible questions. They ask questions like, how does tutoring actually help a student? Is tutoring really necessary? I can change my oil by myself. I don't have to take the car to the Jiffy Lube to get the oil changed. That's not necessary. It's one thing to have a transmission repaired, but I don't need someone to rotate my tires. I don't need someone to change my oil. I can do those things myself. Is tutoring really necessary? Is tutoring worth the money? These are good questions. These are important questions that parents should ask, and they should demand answers. They should demand proven answers. No theory, no promises of future benefits. They should demand proof before they hire anyone to work as a tutor or give anyone any money in the name of tutoring. Because much of what is done in the name of tutoring in modern society is not real tutoring. It's just the multiplication of modern public school activity beyond the scheduled school day or school year. It's just more public school, more modern schooling. And that's the problem in the first place. We don't need more of it. It's like saying that if loud music gives you a headache, the remedy is more loud music. Modern education is responsible for much of the struggle that children face in education, and they don't need more of it to fix those struggles. Sometimes children can't avoid modern education because their parents can't afford to homeschool them. The parents can't afford to send them to a quality private school. There just may not be a private school available to them. And so a public school education may be a necessity, even in homeschooling, because parents aren't well educated or they don't have much money. They may not be able to give their children the best education at home and may end up covering little more than modern diploma requirements. But that's not so much of a problem if the parents can provide the child with an expert tutor to help. So we can't really blame the school, because the school's job is simply to present a curriculum to a large number of students in a superficial way. Schools are not supposed to lead individual students to mastery. That's not the purpose of a school. A school is a service to the community, a common good activity. It's not for individual mastery. It's not the school's responsibility to get Tommy into Harvard. The school presents the curriculum to the entire student body, and then students and parents work to take that general access to a curriculum or to some diploma program and to get the most out of it. And that's what colleges look for. They look to see what students do to make the most or to move beyond the opportunities that are available to them. So it's never the school's fault. Great achievement in learning comes through private activities, just like great achievement in sports comes through private coaching and club sports and so on. This is true of education. The great academic achievements, great intellectual progress comes through private work that a family does to make good use of the general education that's available from the school at the individual level, to go beyond it, to expand upon it, to master it, and so on. So the problem is not the schools, and when the children come home bored, confused, not challenged, and so on, it's because the school isn't supposed to do those things. The student needs more. The school does its job, but the child needs more. And this is the family's private business. The best way to help a student in this situation is to provide that student with a tutor. Now, let me just talk a little bit about the history of education, because this helps to establish some context and give us something to compare ourselves to. In the ancient world, where boys were sent to school, and sometimes this consisted of being sent to a local gymnasium where they were trained in physical exercises and Olympic-type activities, or whether they were sent to a local musician to learn the art and science of music, or whether they were actually sent to a grammar school to be taught the classical liberal arts, they were provided with a companion who is called a pedagogue. A pedagogue. This is where we get the word pedagogy in modern education. A pedagogue was a role that an adult man, often a respected and trusted servant, played in the family. And the role of the pedagogue was to lead the child. That's what the word pedagogue means. It means a leader of a child, a pedagogue. The pedagogue was a companion or a chaperone for the child. The pedagogue would lead the boy into town, lead the boy to school, speak to his masters, his teachers, on his father's behalf, keep an eye on the boy, make sure the boy stayed out of trouble, make sure the bad boys stayed away from his master's son. That work was the work of a pedagogue. Boys were not just sent to school and expected to behave well, because they won't. In fact, in the mysteries of the Rosary, one of the reasons we meditate on the finding of Jesus in the temple is because a 12-year-old boy left by his parents would not go to the temple. That's a mystery, that a 12-year-old boy left by his parents, by his own choice, by his own will, would be found in the temple discussing religious or philosophical questions with the elders. That Christ, as a 12-year-old, was found there by his parents is a mystery of the Catholic faith. In normal circumstances, boys were provided with chaperones called pedagogues who would make sure they did what they were supposed to do in town, stayed out of trouble, paid attention at school, and got home when their lessons were over. This was the role of a pedagogue. In European history, we see the same sort of institution established, but this role was filled more by tutors who came to children's homes. And this is the role of a tutor. It's much broader than a helper with a specific subject. It's much broader and greater a need, more important a need than merely having someone to help a child with their math homework. That's why I say what's done in the name of modern tutoring really is so far from real tutoring. And the fact that people will do this sort of thing, like help children with their math homework and charge $50 an hour, is just ridiculous modern craziness. And parents who just act out of ignorance fork over this money like it's necessary. And there's no need for any such thing. A tutor is really a pedagogue in the life of a Christian child. The tutor represents the religion and morals of the child's parents. The pedagogue or tutor stands in place of the parents as one to whom authority has been delegated to teach the children on behalf of the parents. The tutor does not promote his own will. He doesn't do his own thing, doesn't teach his own thoughts. He agrees to work with parents who trust him, who are like-minded with him, and who are themselves unable to do the work that he can do for a number of reasons. Not because they're lazy and sinful or anything like that, because of real life, just because they have their own work to do and they may not be free to devote their time and attention to the children as the children need. And that's not the parents' fault. Historically, that was provided by a pedagogue or by a tutor. And I'm going to talk about the benefits of tutoring in a little bit that really makes this clear and understandable, because I can see many Catholic families struggling, and they've been taught by this homeschool community, which is just trying to sell stuff to them. They're taught that back in the old days, back in the good old days, parents did all this themselves, and that's false. Parents never did these things. Even extraordinarily intelligent parents didn't do these things. And I'll give an example. Thomas More. Thomas More was a layman, a father with children. He was extraordinarily educated, one of history's most well-educated men. And even Thomas More did not teach his own children. Now, of course, he discussed issues with his children, talked about educational issues, talked about the faith, talked about philosophical issues as their father, but he didn't take upon himself the work of being their tutor. He sought the help of friends. His daughter, for example, was tutored by a man named John Colet, who went on to found St. Paul's School in London, which became one of the most famous classical Christian schools in Europe. John Colet was Thomas More's daughter's tutor. If you ever watch A Man for All Seasons, and I strongly recommend that movie for everyone, but if you watch A Man for All Seasons about the life of Thomas More, there's a scene where King Henry visits Thomas More's home to talk with Thomas More because he's upset with St. Thomas. And the king visits Thomas More's house, and when he first arrives, the king has a discussion with Thomas More's daughter, and he speaks to her in Latin. And the reason why he speaks to her in Latin is because he says that he has heard that she is very well educated as a young English lady. And there's a discussion between them back and forth in Latin. And you may not know what they say. I don't know that the subtitles are able to catch the discussion. But he talks to her about her classical language studies, and she explains that she studies with John Colet. That's what they're discussing in that little discussion. John Colet and Thomas More were friends. John Colet was a professional educator. John Colet, as I said, was the founder of St. Paul's School. And later on, John Colet, Thomas More, and another man named William Lilly put together what's called Lilly's Grammar, which became the official Latin grammar textbook of the king. It was the royal grammar and was taught in England for hundreds of years. It was Shakespeare's grammar textbook. That was written by William Lilly, John Colet, Thomas More, and Desiderius Erasmus, who I forgot to mention. So anyway, all that to say, even an intelligent Catholic saint like Thomas More didn't take upon himself the duties of tutoring. And so this popular homeschool message that, oh yeah, parents just did all this by themselves in history and they all raised saints, that's just homeschool marketing talk. That's not historically true. Tutoring has always been central to quality education, from ancient Greek and Roman times all the way through Catholic European history and into the New World. The public schools, for example, were invented in America for the kids who didn't have tutors, who didn't have education. That's what the schools were intended for. And today, almost no students have real tutors. They're simply sent to schools which don't give attention to individual learning, or parents attempt to homeschool them, which is impossible for parents to do by themselves, unless we settle for low standards. And a lot of these benefits are lost, and we see the results. We see the effects of the abandonment of this culture and institution of Catholic tutoring. So parents can't do these things themselves. What's done in the name of tutoring in modern circles is just homework help. It's just more public schooling. It doesn't help at all. The teachers who work as tutors are not the kind of people that kids need to be with. The rates charged are ridiculous, and they don't address the real issue at the core of Catholic education, which is that children need the help of someone outside of their parents who represents their parents and reinforces the teaching of their parents and promotes the faith and morals of their parents, but is able to do so in a concentrated way that the children need for success, because mom and dad can't do it. And again, we'll talk about this in a little bit in more detail. Kids need this attention. Parents know that their kids need this attention, but the parents can't give it. And this is a giant hole in modern Catholic culture. And like I said, modern tutors are not, they don't possess the philosophical education that's needed for this work. Often they're just helpers in modern school subjects. That's not what we're talking about. And unfortunately, it's confused because modern homework helpers call themselves tutors, which is really not what a tutor is. Tutors help children, students, master the content of their studies at the individual level. That's the role of tutors. Tutors help children master their studies individually. And it's a very challenging work. There's a reason why schools don't do this, because the teachers in schools can't do this. It requires greater expertise. It requires a teacher who is more widely educated than a common school teacher, because a tutor has to be able to work with different students and bring the learning into unique applications in the lives of individual students. A tutor can't teach from a teacher's manual. A tutor can't teach from an answer key. A tutor has to be able to discuss subjects face-to-face, real-time, with an individual student, where that individual student can ask any questions, require specific personal examples or illustrations, and the teacher has to have such a mastery of the education, of the concepts and subjects, that he can have a live, face-to-face discussion with a student and teach the concepts by conversation in a personal and individualized way that school teachers cannot do. The tutor has to be more expert in the subject matter than the school teacher, who just presents lessons generally. The tutor has to be able to discuss them, teach them, assess them, and help the student master them individually in real time, with the students free to ask questions and get into issues that the tutor has no way to prepare for, but can answer because of his breadth of study and depth of mastery. Tutors are more skilled and more rare than school teachers. So there are reasons why modern tutoring doesn't work. Parents can't do this work themselves. Parents need to stop listening to the homeschool marketing messages from the conferences where they're selling books. They have to look at their own experience and realize that they're operating as homeschool parents, to use a common phrase, a mile wide and an inch deep. And that's not Catholic education. Catholic parents, if they choose to homeschool, really don't take on the work of tutoring. They take on the work of the school teacher. Their job is to lead their family, their entire number of children through a general course of studies, because it would be a waste of money to pay a tutor to do that. They can cover general studies. They can cover reading the textbooks and going through the published content. They can do that as homeschool parents. But to lead the individual children to mastery, to inspire and motivate individual students whose personalities differ, who need different levels of attention, and so on, that kind of work parents will not be able to do in most circumstances. And most homeschool parents have experienced that. They feel that. They feel their insufficiency for what the individual children need. And it's a source of stress in homeschooling. As if the parents know that something is wrong, but they can't really put their finger on it, and the answer is tutoring. The children need a tutor. So the parents get out their phone or go on the internet and they Google tutors, and they find all of this ridiculous modern nonsense. $50 an hour, $70 an hour, modern subjects. But that's not what they need. The parents know that that's not what the kids really need. I once had a mother who contacted me and set up tutoring for her two sons. She was a dentist, and she was upset because her two boys, they were these two handsome, smart kids, but they were just bored with school. They weren't challenged, and she was upset that they just weren't growing intellectually. They just weren't being motivated spiritually. They were a Catholic family. She just knew something was wrong, and she wanted help. And so she called me, and I started to visit her and work with her two sons. And then one day she pulled me aside as I was about to leave, and she said, "There's no one like you. There's no one like you." And I know what she meant by that. There are plenty of smart people. There are plenty of school teachers. There are plenty of intellectuals. But this work of tutoring is a unique work that isn't done today. And my classical studies and my historical studies and all of my research have allowed me to learn what this role is in the life of children. And what she meant by saying there's no one like you. First of all, as a Catholic, it's very rare for children to have access to confident, zealous Catholic men. It's one thing to have a Catholic school teacher who's good at a particular subject. It's one thing to see a nun or maybe talk to a brother. It's one thing to have dad be a faithful Catholic man when he's home, but the opportunity for boys, especially boys, to have a relationship with a man who's devoted to intellectual pursuits, to studies, to teaching, to disciple making, as a vocation, as a Catholic man, just doesn't exist. And that's what she meant when she said, "There's no one like you." She was talking about this role of the tutor, saying, this is available nowhere else. And she was one of my first tutoring clients back when I started in 2007. But that's what parents are looking for. There's a gap in their relationship with their children, in their children's education. They can feel that gap exists, but there's no remedy for it. There's no solution to it, because the modern role of the tutor doesn't exist today. It's the role of a servant. And in modern circles, especially in America, American men don't understand the role of a servant to a family. That it's not a position that's less significant or humiliating. It's a necessary role that needs to be played in society for the good of Christian culture. And most men are not willing to play that role, because it's a very difficult role not only to play, but to provide for so that one can play it. That's the challenge. It's difficult to establish the financial independence that allows a man to do this work. It's true, as she said, there's no one like me, that is, who offers this kind of tutoring in modern Catholic society. Because the tutor is more like a pedagogue, more like a medieval tutor, and not the modern tutor. Now, even better for families as we consider this is when you look at the rates that I charge for tutoring, you'll see that they're not crazy like modern tutors. Modern tutors take advantage of desperation that parents feel who are upset about GPAs and SAT scores, whether the kid will be able to go to the college that his parents went to, because they were really hoping to have their son go to their alma mater. That's the kind of stuff that stresses parents out. And they look for tutors in desperation, and tutors take advantage of them and exploit that situation, where they find kids who are struggling and their parents feel like the kids are going down a bad path, and the tutors present themselves as rescuers of these children at a high price. And that whole tutoring industry simply seeks as much money as the parents are willing to pay. It's not real tutoring. It comes when the kids are already too far downstream in their problems, and it doesn't help. And yet that's what many people think of when they think of tutoring. Then you look at my rates, and I charge $20 for an hour of tutoring, because I understand the role of the tutor in the family life. I understand what parents can afford to pay for tutoring. A father can't pay. If a father is making $60,000 a year, let's just use an average type salary. Let's say a Christian man is making $60,000 a year. If we divide that by 12 months, we're down to $5,000 a month. If we divide that by 4 weeks, we're down to $1,250 a week. If we take $1,250 and divide that by 40 hours a week, we're down into the 30s. $30-ish per hour is the rate that a father earns who makes $60,000. So we're talking 30s. Obviously, a man who makes $30 an hour can't afford to pay someone who makes $75 an hour. The plan there makes no sense, unless the tutoring business is exclusively concerned with the professionals making hundreds of dollars per hour. And as I said, people who are interested in that are really not interested in the work of tutoring. They're just into money making, and they target desperate, wealthy parents. That's not the work of Catholic tutoring. You don't have to be a desperate, wealthy physician or attorney to have a tutor. And the rate of tutoring, the lifestyle of a tutor, is not this character that simply takes advantage of desperate, wealthy people. A tutor is a necessary part of Christian culture that serves a necessary and important role in Catholic society. He comes alongside and assists the parents in their work of raising their children in the Catholic faith. He provides a service to the parents that their children need. And he does so, as I said, on behalf of the parents for the overall promotion of the faith and morals of those parents in the lives of their children, while also focusing on their real academic mastery. That's the work of a tutor. And what are the benefits of tutoring? What can I say objectively I can provide a family with through tutoring? And remember, I said not only should tutors be made to answer these questions, but they should be able to prove it. What benefits can I offer Catholic students through tutoring? Well, if you go on the Academy website and you look for the article titled, How Can Tutoring Help Students? Or How Does Tutoring Help Students? I've put a few quotes from former students of mine that answer this question for me. One of my students who's quoted on that page is currently an attorney in Charlotte. Now, when I tutored him, He was a 16-year-old basketball player who was sort of a clueless punk in a family that was struggling through a divorce. He was a good kid. He had good intentions. He wanted to be smart. He wanted to be successful. But he didn't have a lot of support, and his father reached out to me to help him. And I developed a relationship with this kid through his studies in school, because he was at my school, at the prep school I taught in Charlotte. But we also developed a relationship, a tutorial relationship outside of his formal studies. And in the quote that I posted on that article page, it's that tutorial relationship that he's talking about. And he went from a kid who was in a bad place at age 16, even though his wealthy father was able to provide him with a good private school education, it wasn't enough. He needed help personally. He needed help to develop his Christian character. And he went on, by God's grace, to persevere through college studies and to become an attorney. You know, I actually lost touch with him after his college years because I was starting the Classical Liberal Arts Academy at that time, was just very busy. And then out of nowhere, I got a contact on LinkedIn one day to find out that he was now working as an attorney, and I was shocked, because that's such an extraordinary achievement for him from where he was at that time. And he attributed his ability to succeed in school and persevere as a Christian young man to our tutorial relationship. And there's a quote from him on that page, which I recommend you read. Another student of mine who I tutored went on to study at Princeton, a really interesting kid, because our relationship, I was actually his basketball coach at school, and I taught him some classes at school. He was another one of my school students. But he went on to, his parents wanted to prepare him for Ivy League admission. He was a very bright kid. His parents were Princeton graduates themselves, and they were eager for him to go to Princeton. And they wanted him to not only be prepared academically for admission to an Ivy League school, but they wanted him to succeed in an Ivy League school. And they wanted him to succeed as a Christian in an Ivy League school. And so I spent time with their son as a tutor, reinforcing his parents' faith and morals. We spent a lot of time talking about philosophy. We talked about the teachings of Aristotle and Plato, and helped to form a really strong foundation of religion and philosophy in his life. And he went on to be admitted to Princeton and to succeed in Princeton. And most amazingly, despite going to Princeton, he went and majored in engineering at Princeton. And yet, when he finished his degree at Princeton, he chose to go into pastoral ministry as a Protestant. It was a Protestant family. But he chose to go into evangelistic ministry among the poor, and he started an organization in Philadelphia that does that. This kid who was an engineering graduate from Princeton, whose parents were concerned about his Christian formation, ended up devoting his life to Christian evangelistic work, despite having an engineering degree from Princeton University. And he attributes his success at Princeton, or at least a portion of his success, to those philosophical discussions that we had through our tutoring relationship. Just discussions, philosophical discussions. Not scripted, not from a teacher's manual. There's no answer key. Just discussions, personal discussions between a tutor and a student that help a student with the issues that he needs help with. And then a third quote that I have included on that page is from a student of mine who was one of my favorite students. He was an All-American soccer player in high school. He went on to be a star soccer player in college and then was a professional soccer player. But I had him as a student in high school. And we spent time together, again, in a tutoring relationship, and discussed logic and rhetoric, Christian philosophy, and disputations. And even though he went on to a career as a professional athlete, he was a professional goalkeeper, he had a very strong Christian character, and he actually became a representative of the professional soccer players and represented them in arguing political issues, religious issues, and things like that, because he found that when he became a professional player, he was challenged in moral issues that he had to deal with, but he was well prepared for them. In the news this week, because it's Pride Month here in June, the professional baseball team, the Florida Marlins, I think they are. I think that's the team it was. I'm not sure if there was a professional baseball team in Tampa Bay, but it was a Florida team. And a few of the players refused to wear some gay pride patches on their baseball jerseys. They said, no, that's contrary to our faith. We don't believe in gay pride and all this stuff. We don't want this patch on our uniform when we go out there and play. And they had to resist this effort that their team, the organization that they play and are paid by, they had to resist this initiative to promote gay pride with these rainbow patches on their jerseys. Pro athletes are faced with lots of issues like that. Financial issues, appeals to represent different activities or interest groups. They're very much like politicians because they have so much public influence. And this student of mine, as soon as he was into pro soccer, he started to realize just how many philosophical and moral and religious controversies there were to be dealt with as a professional athlete. And if you read the quote from him on that page, you'll see he attributes his ability to navigate through those issues and defend and articulate his own faith to our logic and rhetoric studies that we did together through our tutoring relationship. And I could provide lots of examples and testimonies from former students and parents, but I want you to see that there's more to a child's formation than his grades or his SAT scores or a particular subject he's struggling with. There's much more to the needs that a child has that parents don't necessarily have the time or expertise to deal with. And they don't need to deal with it because they have their own responsibilities as parents. A father is primarily responsible to provide for the material needs of his family. That's a challenging work in and of itself. And a father needs to be able to devote his attention to that work and not feel like he's some kind of, worldly bum because he doesn't spend time talking to his kids about religion or philosophy, but he spends his time working when he's working to provide for his family out of love. Many fathers are beaten up by their wives because they don't spend a lot of time with their kids. A lot of men beat up themselves because they don't get to spend time with their kids. But it's really not time with dad that they need. And historically, it wasn't dad who filled that role. Dad simply provided the children with a tutor who spoke to the children usually with greater expertise than dad has about those issues on dad's behalf. That was the role of a tutor. Dad wasn't divided and frustrated by this sense of being pulled in two different directions. And again, if you want an example of this, look at Thomas More. Thomas More devoted his attention to his life and work as a lawyer, as the Chancellor of England, and he delegated the tutorial work that his children needed to other men, to friends of his who he trusted, who he knew would faithfully share his own faith and morals with academic expertise that he didn't have time to give to his children. It was no problem for a father. And so we see that tutoring is actually the need not for dad to quit his job. And mothers have little time for this either. We often see families choose to homeschool, and what homeschooling ends up meaning is that mom is now responsible for all of the work of a housewife and of an entire school system. And it doesn't work. The homeschool community tries to puff it up and make it look awesome to sell stuff. But the mothers who actually do the work of homeschooling know that you have to water down the standards so far that you're going to barely get through modern school requirements with your children as a homeschool mother. And it's going to leave a lot of dissatisfaction with the results. Mothers also struggle with the problem of having sons who spend all of their time with mom. And they know that this isn't good for my sons. My sons need to have a male influence. And so what the mothers do is they turn and they wrongly accuse the father of not doing enough in the life of the child, when the father is thinking, what am I supposed to do? I have to work to pay the bills. I have no time. It's not like I'm sitting around, playing video games here. And what we see is that there's something missing in that family life. There's something missing in that Catholic educational culture. And what's missing is the role and work of a classical Catholic tutor. And that's what I'm talking about. So to get through the benefits of tutoring quickly, first of all, the first real benefit, and again, I can provide evidence that my tutoring provides these benefits, because I've successfully tutored students who have become not only successful in college or business or other professions, but in the Christian life itself. And again, I don't take credit for their Christian life. It's entirely dependent on the grace of God. But the work of a tutor is part of the society that God intends to exist in our family lives. It's an instrument in the work of making disciples. The first benefit is that it forces children to learn. It forces children to learn. One of the greatest plagues of modern education, one of the greatest plagues in modern education is cheating. Kids are able to cheat. I know when I was a student, I was able to cheat. There's so much cheating in modern education. And cheating is possible when students don't answer teachers directly. Any time that teachers send students to be assessed on a computer or in writing creates an opportunity for students to cheat. And the worst thing about cheating is that the smarter a student is, the more easily he can cheat, the more successfully he can cheat. And once a student learns to cheat, he stops studying. Written assignments, answers can be copied and pasted, copied from friends, borrowed from other people. Someone can quickly Google a question, find an answer, and paste it into an assignment and never study the lesson. Kids can take online quizzes. They can look around and see, hey, what'd you write for number 12? C? Okay, C. How about 14? B. Okay, B. They can cheat on quizzes and tests. They can cheat on written assignments. They can copy and paste. They can skip the instructions of lessons. They can avoid the studies and find ways to get past the teachers. Much of modern education fails because children simply learn to cheat. And this can't be done when there's a tutor involved. Like I said, a tutor works individually with a student. The tutor looks a child right into the eyes and discusses the subject with the child. The only way the child can answer the questions is if he knows the answers. There's no way to cheat with a tutor. So tutors can ensure that children are actually studying and mastering the content of their lessons. Secondly, tutoring makes learning pleasant. Tutoring makes learning pleasant. In my course in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy on English composition, the very first chapter in the English composition course talks about why modern writing courses are so terrible. I didn't write this. This is an older textbook. But the author of this English composition textbook explains why modern school writing classes are so ineffective, why students hate modern writing classes, and why we have kids walking around saying things like, I'm not a good writer. This textbook author, who I respect very much, it's a very excellent course, our English composition course. He explains that students don't like writing courses because they're asked to write about things that they're not interested in. They're asked to write about topics that they don't know about. They're asked to write about things that they would never talk about. And most students get in trouble in school because they talk too much. They won't shut up in school. Children love to talk, but they hate to write. And this textbook author asks, why is it that kids love to talk but hate to write? And the answer, he says, which I believe is true, is that when children talk, they talk to their friends. They talk to their parents. They talk to people that they like. They talk to people that they believe will be interested in what they have to say. And they talk about topics that they're interested in. They talk about topics that they know a lot about. They talk about things that they've experienced. And that's why children love to talk, because they talk to people that they're interested in, and they talk about things that they actually know about and like to talk about. They like to talk. But when it's time to write and they go to a writing class, the writing teacher asks them to write about a topic that they're not interested about. They're not interested in. Who are they writing to? There's no audience for what they're being asked to write. The topic is not interesting. They don't have any experience in this topic. They don't know anything about this topic. And they associate all of those problems with the assignment, with writing itself, and they lose interest in writing and say things like, I'm not a good writer, which is nonsense. What we learn in English composition is that children prefer to talk because they talk about things they're interested in. They talk about things that they have knowledge and experience of. It's very easy for them to talk about these topics. And if they have to choose to talk or to write, they would much rather talk than write. But school teachers often are required to have the children write because they have to collect the assignments from all the students, take them home, and sit down and grade them at another time. And so writing is necessary for schooling, but writing is unpleasant. children would rather talk, but talking is really not for a group activity. Talking is more for individual relationships, and this is another benefit of tutoring. When parents provide their children with the opportunity to study with an expert tutor, the mode or the manner in which their studies are conducted changes. It changes from written assignments, online tests and quizzes, written tests and quizzes, again, all of which can be cheated on, which is another problem. But it changes it to a more pleasant, conversational, face-to-face, personal, spoken mode of education. It's much more pleasant for the children. You don't have to worry about whether or not you brought your homework to class. Your homework is in your brain, and you're going to talk about it with your tutor. If you get something wrong, the tutor is not going to put an X on your paper. The tutor is simply going to talk to you about it, explain a more perfect answer, and then ask you the question again and have you repeat the right answer. And it's all conducted through discussion, which is much more pleasant, much more effective, and is real learning. Socrates warned in one of Plato's dialogues, he warned that writing and books destroys education. Because people think that because something is in a book or that they've written something, that they know it. But the truth is, you only know what you actually possess in your mind and take with you. That's your real knowledge. That's your real understanding and learning. And that true knowledge, that true understanding is expressed in your speaking. What you talk about, what you're able to talk about, what you actually know, what you bring with you everywhere you go, what actually exists in your soul. That's what you actually know. Tutoring allows education to move from books and papers to the child's mind and speech, to the child himself. It makes education not only more effective, but it makes it more pleasant. More pleasant. The third thing that tutoring does, and I've already mentioned this a few times, tutoring improves the quality of family life. Tutoring improves the quality of family life. Homeschooling asks, or I should say this, if we look at children who go to school, they have a number of different relationships in their lives. Take a public school student. The student has a relationship with mom and dad. The student has a relationship with his teachers. The student may have a relationship with a church priest or pastor. You see, the child has a number of different relationships. A father would never think of trying to be a priest for his children. The father brings the child to church to speak with his priest. The father may never think to be the boy's soccer coach. He takes the boy to practice, and the soccer coach works with the boy. But when it comes to education, the homeschooling parents imagine that the teachers are not necessary. And what happens is the student, the child, loses relationships, or at least loses one relationship with the teacher. And the parents become both the child's parents and teachers. And this isn't good. If you think back to images of the history of education, the schoolmasters often carried a rod in their hand, a ruler or a yardstick or just a switch. The schoolmaster had to drive the children. The schoolmaster had to make the children study. And they had to be strict. They had to be nasty because the kids needed to be pushed and challenged to work. And so a child had a relationship with his schoolmaster that was unpleasant and strict. It was harsh. It was driving and commanding. And when the school bell rang at the end of the day, that relationship was over. And the child grabbed his stuff and ran home and had a relationship with his parents outside of school, away from the schoolmaster, away from the strictness and the rigor of the classroom. The child went home and rested with loving parents until it was time to go back to school. The image of the schoolmaster is and has to be strict. One of my former priests was a school teacher himself as a priest. And he said the secret to school teaching is to never smile at the children until Thanksgiving. That those first 2 or 3 months have to be so strict and serious to establish the routines and the habits and the standards that a teacher shouldn't let the children see him smile until they reach Thanksgiving in the school year. There has to be a rigor and a discipline in school, and children have that relationship with a teacher that's difficult. In homeschooling, the children have that relationship with their parents, unless the parents just abandon academic goals altogether. And we have this sort of caveman unschooling culture that becomes attractive to parents because they see the nature of this schoolmaster relationship, and they don't want that relationship with their children. Mom doesn't want to be a nasty old nun with a yardstick whacking kids' knuckles. She doesn't want to have that relationship with her children. She wants to be mommy to her children. And a father wants to sit and grab his son and pull him up on his lap and hug him and kiss him. They don't want to have this hard schoolmaster relationship with their children. And yet homeschooling, if it's going to pursue real standards of learning, requires that the parents have the schoolmaster relationship with their children. And it makes homeschooling and family life quite miserable. Unless, like I said, parents choose to just throw it off and pretend they're just going to raise their children without that discipline, which creates a mess. The children need both of those influences. It's like having the influences of both the church and the state in your life. You need someone to pull you over when you speed and give you a ticket when you don't get your car registered and yell at you when you're causing trouble in town. You need that discipline and fear that's created by the state in your life to keep you disciplined. But you also need the forgiving, generous church to love you and nurture you and to always be welcoming to you. We have both the church and the state as these two different influences in our lives, and the same relationship exists with a child with his mother and father to some degree, and the same relationship exists for a student with relationship to his schoolmasters, good schoolmasters that is, and his parents. When parents provide the children with a third party who takes responsibility for the discipline of the schoolwork, the intellectual rigor of the thinking and memorizing and reciting and copying and questioning and disputing, when that's able to be delegated to a third person, the parents don't need to fulfill that role, and it improves the relationship between the student and his parents. A tutor, at times, needs to be willing to be the bad guy in the child's life. The parents are able to delegate the bad guy role to the tutor, which improves their relationship with their children, but at the same time doesn't neglect their children's need to be challenged and disciplined, to be pushed intellectually. But this is the work of the tutor. And when the tutoring session is over, the tutor leaves. This improves the relationship between the parents and improves the family's quality of life. Moreover, having a tutor work with the children allows mom to do mom's work, and the family benefits by having mom's work done. Having a tutor allows dad to do dad's work, and the family benefits by having dad's work done. You can say, well, but a tutor costs money. Yes, but a father who's undistracted from his professional work will be more successful in that professional work, and the opportunity to focus in that way will increase the father's income and take care of the costs of tutoring. Tutoring can help the father make more money through his actual occupation, through his professional focus, his field of work. Mom can be a better mom, dad can be a better dad, because a tutor allows them to focus on their peculiar work. There's also a sense of anxiety that troubles a mother and father when they're uncertain of whether or not their children are making sufficient progress. Homeschool parents ask me all the time, how are my kids doing? And I say, your children are homeschooling. I have no idea how they're doing. How am I supposed to tell you how your children are doing? I have no relationship with your children. I don't know how your children are doing. And I can see that the parents are anxious about their children's progress. And that anxiety is real. It's responsible. But that anxiety remains in the hearts of those parents until they actually do something about it. And again, I would argue that that anxiety is calling for the assistance of a tutor to come along and say to the parents, I'll take care of that. Everything will be fine. Focus on your own work, Mom. Focus on your own work, Dad. I'll help with the academic stuff. I'm a professional tutor. That's what I do. And so overall, tutoring improves the quality of family life. The last benefit that I'll talk about is that tutoring helps to promote learned vocations and religious vocations. Tutoring helps to promote intellectual vocations and religious vocations, contemplative vocations, and so on. Children see their mother and father at their worst. Children see their parents when they argue with each other. Children see dad when he loses his temper. Children see mom when she's sick. Children see their parents at their worst. They see dad stressed about the bills. They see mom upset about some aspect of family life. They see their parents busy and troubled with many things, because that's the responsibility of parents. The love of parents for their children makes them careful about many things. We understand that. Parents are troubled and worried about many things, and children see them at their worst. They see them under the pressure of these worldly influences, which is just part of being a parent, part of being married, is that there's stress. They're distracted from daily prayers. They're distracted from keeping Sunday holy. They see their parents struggle and fail. And it's okay, because failure is expected in the Christian life. It's why we have the sacrament of confession. If your children's salvation depends upon your perfection as a parent, then what's confession for? It's not for parents. You're going to fail, and your children are going to see you when you fail. Your children are going to see you stressed about money, stressed about the house, stressed about health and avoiding sickness and dealing with illnesses and, our health insurance didn't cover this, and all of these worldly problems. And your children will become anxious about these things themselves as they get older. They'll become anxious. They'll say things like, well, I want to be wealthy because I don't want to have the financial stress that my dad had. I don't want to get, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to marry a Catholic man because I saw how my mother was always stressed. I'm going to marry a wealthy man. And the struggles that children see their parents go through can have a negative effect on their lives, can make them anxious about the future, about their own adult lives, and lead them away from religion, away from intellectual pursuits, because they're simply anxious about the future based on their own experience. This is true of my own children. My children see me struggling because they see the business side of classical Catholic education. They see the difficulty of raising children within the Catholic faith. They see the struggles of a husband and wife who've been together since they were 17 years old. My kids see my wife and I at our worst, and your children will see you at your worst, and it will have a negative effect on them. Of course, they will also see you at your best, and the sincerity of your love and your patience and your perseverance will be inspiring and comforting and encouraging to your children. I see that in my children. My children know that we love them. And my children love my wife and I because they know that even though we struggle and we fail and things are difficult at times, they know that we truly love them unconditionally as our children. But it has a negative influence on the way they think and look at their future. A tutor can help to balance this. A tutor can help to balance this. When the children see their tutor, they see their tutor at his best. They see him when he visits the house or when they visit his office. They see him dressed for work. They see him when he's healthy. He doesn't talk to them about money. He doesn't talk to them about the bills or the grocery bills or the cost of gasoline. He doesn't talk about these things. The tutor is focused on the principal things. The tutor is focused. He's heavenly minded. He's usually, if he's a true tutor, he's usually gifted by God for the work of tutoring. He's patient. He's able to teach and explain things. He has mental strength, intellectual strength that allows him to wear students out. And the students feel that. And they're challenged by the tutor. They see in the tutor's life a life devoted to intellectual things, to religious things, to spiritual things. I'm in the process of becoming a member of the Dominican order. My tutoring students are going to sit with a man who's a Dominican. They're going to see a man who, even though he's married, has a religious vocation. And tutors who are intellectually gifted and spiritually gifted, who are zealous for the kingdom of heaven, who are single-minded in their lives, who have separated themselves and disentangled themselves from worldly pursuits, present to Catholic children a model of intellectual and religious life that they're not going to see 24 hours a day from their parents. And the tutor becomes an inspiration for intellectual vocations, for religious vocations, and so on. The tutor is sort of a ladder or a bridge between family life and learned professions, religious vocations, contemplative occupations, and so on. And so tutoring can promote future vocations in learned professions and in religion, which is important in a generation that has few, if any, religious vocations. So these are some of the concrete benefits of tutoring. And I think that if you've listened to this as a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know exactly how this could help your life. You see exactly what I'm referring to. You can see exactly where this would fit into your life. And the big issue for you will be, how much does this cost? How do we afford this? And so on. And like I said, the costs are really not significant. First of all, whenever we talk about the cost, you have to compare it to the opposite possible outcomes. You can't go on the way that things are going. So you can't compare paying nothing for things as they are to paying something for the help of a tutor. You've got to compare apples with apples. My standard rate for tutoring is only $20 per hour, and that's because I, as a Catholic man who am content with a simple life, simply have to cover the costs of my office, the costs of my utilities, the simple costs of my own family life, much of which is already provided for. But I'm not in this to make money off of people in desperation. This, for me, is my Catholic apostolate. This is my Catholic work. The standard rate is $20 for a 1-hour tutoring session. Parents can reserve as many of those sessions as they want. If parents want special arrangements, if they'd like to arrange, let's say, in a number of weekly meetings, and the cost begins to increase, we can make discounted rates and talk about special arrangements and things like that. That's these financial concerns. We're talking about dollars. We're not talking thousands of dollars. We're not talking about student loans and ridiculous costs. We're talking dollars. We're talking $15, $20. Money that gets spent anytime you walk into a convenience store. Money that's being wasted most likely on lots of things in your life that you don't need, that you simply need to reprioritize. We're not talking large numbers of money. We're not talking private school tuition. We're talking dollars. And you're in control of how much time is provided for the children, what is done in those tutoring sessions, because the tutor works on your behalf with your children. We can make special arrangements to make things more affordable. We can talk about different methods of payment, on and on. There are a million ways to take care of the payments. That's really not the issue. The number one issue in tutoring is that usually parents don't understand what real tutoring is, and they can't imagine that something like that is actually available for their family. The financial side of things really isn't the issue. It's affordable. If you consider these things valuable and you consider what the cost is for the help that's needed, cost is not the limiting factor in the education of your children with tutors. Your understanding of the role of a tutor and your awareness that this help is available is really the limiting factor. So, I trust that this talk has stirred your interest if you've listened this far. I trust that you understand what I'm talking about, and you don't need any more persuading. Our kids' needs are clear. The role of the tutor is essential in Catholic culture, and you simply need to move forward and make these arrangements. If you're local in the Monroe or Charlotte area, we can set up in-person tutoring, whether it's at my office in downtown Monroe or at your home in the Charlotte area. So in-person tutoring is an option for those nearby. But if you're at a distance, technology gives us the opportunity to enjoy a tutoring, maybe not in the same exact degree of intimacy and personableness that we could enjoy face-to-face in person, but still, compared with nothing, the relationship that's available and the opportunities that are available by the use of video conference technology are awesome. And it takes some time to become comfortable with them. But your kids will become comfortable with them to talk to their friends, to talk about nonsense. Why not become comfortable with them for the sake of their education? It may take a few sessions to really get comfortable and get all of that awkwardness out, but the benefits will be worth it. And the video conferencing allows us to meet all throughout the day. I can have meetings at nighttime hours that we would never be able to have in-person meetings at, even with international students, because we can just flip on a camera and be face-to-face. So whether you're local or remote, this tutoring relationship and the benefits of tutoring are available, and they're affordable. We simply have to get started, and we have to learn how to rethink our family life, rethink our children's education, and allow this role of the tutor to come in and help. And you'll quickly see the benefits as it works itself out and becomes normal for you and for your children. So if you're interested in moving forward, just get in touch with us. You can either get in touch with me or contact my wife in the office, by phone, by email, on live chat, on the website, whatever. We can set up appointment times, whether you want them to be once in a while on demand, whether you want them to be weekly or monthly or even daily. Whatever you want, we can get these things set up. I'm just getting back into tutoring, so my schedule is wide open right now, and we can start nailing down days and times and getting started either this summer or this fall. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that's comforting and inspiring for you, and I look forward to hearing from parents who are ready to get started, and I look forward to working with children on your behalf as a classical Catholic tutor. God bless.